ChatGPT said, "Welcome back to Beyond Binary, where we decode the technology shaping our world and the space beyond it." Today's story isn't about rockets or astronauts. It's about something far more invisible and far more dangerous. A new kind of conflict brewing above our heads, one that could redefine global power, communication, and even survival itself. Welcome to Space Wars 2025. Satellites, lasers, and the new arms race above Earth. If you're watching this on your phone or computer, that connection, whether through Wi-Fi, GPS, or cellular data, relies on satellites. There are now over 9,000 active satellites orbiting Earth, doing everything from powering your navigation to guiding missiles, tracking weather, managing global trade, and even controlling power grids. The problem? These tiny dots in orbit have become strategic targets in a new technological battlefield. But before we dive into the war in space, we need to rewind to something that shook the global tech and defense world earlier this year, the 2025 shutdown. For those outside the United States, a shutdown happens when the government runs out of funding because Congress can't agree on a budget. Non-essential departments stop working, federal employees are furloughed, and government projects freeze. It's like pressing pause on one of the most complex bureaucratic machines on Earth. This time, though, it hit much deeper. The 2025 shutdown lasted for weeks, longer than expected, and during that window, NASA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and even parts of the Space Force were partially offline. Satellite maintenance missions were delayed, cybersecurity teams went understaffed, and critical upgrades to orbital defense systems were postponed. And while Earth's politics were stuck, space didn't wait. During that downtime, multiple reports emerged of unusual satellite movements, some suspected to be Russian and Chinese inspection satellites, maneuvering dangerously close to American and European communication arrays. These so-called inspection satellites are dual-use. They can repair or refuel, but they can also jam, disable, or even capture enemy satellites. And with the US distracted by its internal shutdown, analysts believe rivals used the opportunity to test how far they could go. So what caused this shutdown in the first place? It wasn't just about budgets. It was about priorities. The US government was deeply divided over how much funding to allocate to space defense versus domestic programs. The Space Force, the youngest branch of the US military, had requested billions for new orbital surveillance systems, laser defense technologies, and AI-based threat detection networks. Critics argued that these funds were fueling a dangerous arms race in orbit. Supporters countered that not investing now would leave the US vulnerable. When the debate deadlocked, the government simply stopped functioning, and the world's most advanced space programs temporarily ground to a halt. And that pause, small as it seemed, might have tilted the balance of power in space. Let's talk about what that balance looks like today. Space is no longer the empty frontier of exploration. It's the new high ground of warfare. Whoever controls orbit controls communication, navigation, and surveillance. Imagine if GPS went down for even a few hours. Planes couldn't navigate, ships would drift off course, banking systems would freeze, and missile guidance would fail. In a world where so much depends on signals from above, a satellite isn't just a piece of metal. It's a weapon, a target, and a shield all in one. And that's why we're seeing an unprecedented rush to arm the heavens. The US, China, Russia, India, and even private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are locked in a quiet race to dominate low Earth orbit. Take China's Shutdown series of satellites. Officially, they're experimental. Unofficially, they're suspected to be capable of grappling other satellites using robotic arms, potentially disabling or capturing them. Russia, meanwhile, has tested anti-satellite missiles, or ASATs, that can destroy targets in orbit. One of their tests in 2021 created over 1,500 pieces of debris, forcing astronauts aboard the ISS to take shelter. And the US? It's experimenting with directed energy weapons, essentially space-based lasers capable of blinding or disabling enemy satellites without creating debris. These technologies mark the dawn of the soft kill era of space warfare, where instead of blowing things up, you silently blind, jam, or hack them. The weapons are invisible, but their impact is massive. And behind all this, AI is becoming the general of this invisible battlefield. Machine learning algorithms now manage satellite formations, detect potential threats, and even predict hostile maneuvers in orbit. It's a system where human reaction times simply can't keep up. But here's the terrifying part. Unlike traditional warfare, there's no international treaty clearly regulating these actions in space. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty banned nuclear weapons in orbit, but it never accounted for lasers, cyber attacks, or autonomous satellites. We're living in a legal gray zone where every move is technically not illegal, but could be catastrophic. And as if that weren't enough, private corporations are now major players. SpaceX's Starlink constellation alone has more satellites than every government combined. In Ukraine, Starlink has been used for real-time battlefield communication, making a private company a direct participant in warfare. That raises massive ethical and geopolitical questions. Who owns space? Who defends it? And who decides what's off-limits? The term space wars might sound cinematic, but the consequences are chillingly real. Disabling a satellite could cripple entire sectors of an economy. An accidental collision caused by a cyber attack or miscalculated maneuver could trigger a cascade of debris, a scenario known as the Kessler syndrome, where one collision leads to hundreds more, rendering orbit unusable for decades. And here's where it all ties back to the 2025 shutdown. That moment exposed how dependent modern civilization is on stable, well-funded space infrastructure. When the government froze, it wasn't just politics that stopped. It was surveillance, weather forecasting, even parts of the GPS network that faced delayed recalibrations. The world got a glimpse of how fragile our space-based ecosystem truly is. Experts now warn that a space Pearl Harbor isn't science fiction. It's a real possibility. A sudden, coordinated attack that takes out key satellites could blind an entire nation in seconds. No missiles, no explosions on Earth, just silence above the clouds. But it's not all doom and lasers. There's still hope. A growing movement of scientists and policymakers is calling for a new international framework, something like a Geneva Convention for space. It would limit weaponization, regulate private operations, and establish clear consequences for hostile actions in orbit. The European Union and Japan are leading discussions for a code of conduct for outer space activities, though enforcement remains uncertain. Meanwhile, technological innovation isn't slowing down. Companies are developing resilient constellations, networks of small, low-cost satellites that can quickly replace damaged ones. Others are experimenting with self-healing networks, where AI reroutes data through alternative paths if a satellite is compromised. Think of it as cybersecurity, but in 3 dimensions, above the atmosphere. Still, the reality is clear. Space is no longer just humanity's final frontier. It's the next battleground. The skies above us are filling with lasers, sensors, and AI-driven defense systems, all operating in a delicate, invisible balance. One misstep, one miscommunication, could ignite a conflict no one can control. As we look toward the rest of 2025 and beyond, one question looms. Can we find peace in the one place humanity has never fought before? Or have we already turned the heavens into the next theater of war? Because the truth is, the next great war may not start on Earth, but it will decide the fate of everything that happens here. Thanks for watching Beyond Binary. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the technology shaping our future. And remember, the next time you look up at the stars, you might not just be seeing the night sky, you might be looking at the front lines of the future. Settings. Add word-by-word subtitle. Use a male voice with a Californian accent for the narrator.